get it.
SDP, the Steve Dangle Podcast, with your hosts, Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake.
Let's go!
Man, I told you the Leafs would be sitting pretty if they had just won that game in Montreal. Because even with the overtime loss, they've still now taken 3 or 4 points from the Senators. But I wouldn't even say that they lost a point against the Senators. They just gave it away. They gave it away. I'm going to be harping on this forever. Harping on this forever. But before we get into that, guys, we have a huge show ahead. We're going to get to who wore the crown in just a second. But Katie Strang from The Athletic, I don't know, she kind of had a big story this week.
Biggest story in hockey, I'd say.
I think it might be the biggest story of the year. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen an expose. Remember Michael Russo went deep inside I think it was the Fenton administration with the Minnesota Wild?
Every year there is one, hey, check out this mess article. It's not even every year. You don't get one like this every season. Fenton was that, I think it was 2 years ago now, in Katie Strang's with the Arizona Coyotes. It's a doozy. It's a podcast as well. And I think it's only getting started.
There you go. So we're going to get to Katie in just about 20 minutes here. Let's get into who wore the crown. And we'll see if Jesse actually gives the crown back to William Nylander. Steve Simmons certainly doesn't. But in the meantime, Steve, kicking it off with you.
No, not yet.
Sponsor.
Adam, people paid good money to sponsor this segment.
I'm sorry,
and you have the audacity
Wow.
to not read their liners.
Adam, we're trying to keep the lights on here. We're trying to pay some bills.
That old
Coming up around the corner.
Coming right back and pay some bills.
I was off that one. What was it? TJ said, yeah, I've locked my boss out for like rock radio guys. Locked my boss out, but I'm still going to play some commercials. Like play what I want, except I'll play some commercials. Yeah, there'll be radio jocks that'll do that. Yeah, lock my boss out today. Playing whatever I want to play. Give me a call. And here's some commercials, by the way. So, Jesse, who is our sponsor?
Airports. So I got an email from the airports around the world. They said, we're slowing down traffic over the last 12 months. We need some more business. So we're going to sponsor this Who Wore the Crown segment and get some more traffic towards the airports.
Well, otherwise people wouldn't know about airports.
Who wore the crown? Brought to you by airports. The next time you need to fly to an island, or go to an island, why not?
Fly not!
Why not?
But do fly.
Fly not until COVID's over, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, why not take an airplane instead of a ship that'll take you 6 to 8 weeks?
FLHY. Fly not.
All right, Steve.
I don't feel good about myself.
Who's got the crown?
You know what? I'm going to give it to a guy who was real bad in that 6-5 overtime loss to the Ottawa Senators, but he has otherwise been very good recently, including in the Leafs' second of 3 games against the Ottawa Senators, but he's been battling to get on the score sheet, and that's John Tavares. He's never going to get it. He's never going to get the accolades that, Matthews scores friggin' 4 times a game. It's ridiculous. Marner's is so fun to watch. He's not a rough and tumble guy. He's not a speedster, but he's just a Gronk who works hard. John Tavares, he's been. I love his game. You have to watch him a little harder to appreciate it than Matthews, but he's working through it and he's going to bust out.
He's been the surprising. We'll get to it right after this segment's done, but the criticism leveled at him has been just unbelievable lately. I guess if you're going to be a Leaf, that's what's going to happen eventually. But my crown,
like the fourth most criticized Leaf.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. My crown goes to Justin Hall for the beautiful setup with Austin Matthews. And of course, they did a really great job during the game yesterday of saying, like, here's, I think it was during the intermission show, and they were talking about, hey, like Morgan Riley didn't spot Matthews in overtime last game. Had he, that probably would have been a goal. And you could see from Matthews' reaction how much he wanted it, how excited he was by it. And the thing is that, like, when you watch any show, like the Michael Jordan documentary is a perfect example. If you're on the court with Michael Jordan, you know who's getting the last shot, right?
Yeah.
And that should be the way it works here in hockey. And I know everybody's like, well, it's a different game. It's a different game. Sort of, but not really. When you have a shot like that, if Alexander Ovechkin's on your team, Alexander Ovechkin's getting the shot, right?
Yeah.
He's getting the shot. He's getting open. He's getting the shot. Matthews, open, got the shot, and scored. And I don't think people give it enough credit. That was a pretty tough angle to score from. And the fact that the puck was already on the side of that ice. Justin Holl is on the right side of the ice. Austin Matthews is on the right side of the ice. There is no way that the goalie has to swing from side to side. Normally that you see goes bing right in. And that, I think, is the reason that Justin Holl deserves that. He spotted the guy who's going to score the goal, and he made it happen. Jesse.
That was a really pretty goal. Like, I haven't seen anything like that in a while.
It's like amazing.
It like teleported.
Yeah, it was cool.
It was true. Oh.
I got to hit up the Twitter account of Mike Kelly NHL on Twitter.
You took it from the broadcast. I love it.
We'll get to that. I'm sad that he made the broadcast, but we'll get there. So Mike Kelly tweeted, Nylander doesn't spend very much time in the places where Matthews and Marner score. So that is a quote from Steve Simmons' article yesterday in The Sun about how William Nylander and John Tavares are garbage. So he quoted Steve Simmons and he said, false. Half of all goals scored from the inner slot net front area. Nylander was fourth in the league and first on the Leafs in shots and goals from there last year. And if you remember that, we brought it up on this podcast several times, like throughout the entire year. We're like, he's a net front player. That was a running joke.
Bro, like once an episode.
He was like 25 goals in front of the net last year?
Yeah, it was crazy. He fourth in the league, first on the Leafs. Mike Kelly continued. He said, Nylander hasn't been getting there as often this season, but is still fifth on the team in inner slot shots ahead of Marner. Preconceived notions don't trump facts. So this episode, Nylander gets my crown because of Steve Simmons' terrible article that somehow made the front page of the Toronto Sun and had everybody's shaking their fists yesterday in Toronto. And then
there was a lot of fist shaking.
It made the broadcast of the game, which I thought was very strange for Sportsnet to show that.
Let's pause on this for just a second. I need to wrap up this segment, then we'll jump right back into it. Is that okay?
Yes,
because I do want to talk about this. This is
wrap
really
it up
important.
for the sponsor.
Right, yeah. So who wore the crown? Brought to you by airports. They get you where you need to go. Maybe you want to drop Steve Simmons off on the other side of the world, and that won't stop him from logging onto the internet. But why not try?
Why not?
I'm kidding. Steve, actually, it's funny with Steve Simmons. Super nice in person. Just probably the worst hockey takes in the history of man. And I think what's really important here is that you understand what he's doing. We talk about this a lot. There was no reason. First off, there's no reason we need to be talking about him anymore. But he was trending across Canada because people were so outraged that Steve Simmons said something that Steve Simmons always says. This is what Steve Simmons does. If you want to know who Steve Simmons' audience is and who he's writing his articles for, Toronto Baghead. That's who he's writing it for.
Who's not even real.
Who's not even a real guy.
Can you explain what that is to people who don't know?
So basically, okay, we always joke about your uncle hating William Nylander, right? It's always the thing. Your uncle, he doesn't work hard, but can't put the pieces together, whatever else. And objectively, it's untrue. But you can't tell him otherwise because Joe at work told him that. And Matt, who's in his family, told him that. And they sit around the table and they bitch about. There's always got to be somebody, right? That people bitch about on the team. It's like, for some reason, Bruins fans didn't like Tuukka Rask. We, who didn't have a goalie for a decade and a half, were like, seems pretty good to us.
The
Bruins
2011 Canucks.
Only been to the Stanley Cup Finals twice. What the hell?
The 2011 Canucks were literally perfect, but they needed one, so they had Mason Raymond.
Exactly. Every fan base who is like really engaged has one. And I think we need to stop reading what Steve Simmons says. You're not going to agree with it. He's not going to offer anything in terms of objective analysis, even if it's subjective opinion. that's going to matter to you. If you are listening to this show, chances are you're not a regular Toronto Sun reader for Steve Simmons. There are reporters there who are brilliant. Steve Simmons is an editorialist. He is going to give you an opinion that gets him one thing. He doesn't care about anything other than this, and that is your click. And if you clicked on the article, if you shared the article and said, how outrageous is this, he wins. And every time you do this, he wins.
Can I ask you guys a question? Are you disappointed in Post Media for giving him a platform?
Oh, man.
Why is it the front page the day after they didn't even play?
Because they had nothing else to talk about. Guys, listen, Post Media. On the list of the list of Post Media people that should not have a platform does not start with Steve Simmons. Okay?
Yeah.
There's a lot of really questionable shit going on with that newspaper. There is. And that's the point. That's what it's supposed to be. It's a tabloid.
But you mean at all, Jesse? Like at all, or
giving,
just the front page?
Just the attention. Like, because I saw a lot of that because everyone's like, oh, don't give him the attention. But like his bosses are the ones who give him the platform on the website and in the physical paper, which doesn't really exist anymore. He gets the front page of that. So the people were upset at him having the platform, but you're not upset with him. You're upset with his bosses, right?
We did a very big wrestling show when Edge came on, and there's baby faces and heels, and the heels always go back to the same thing. They insult the local sports team, and they take a number one baby face and they cut him down or her down. And I think they just played the hits. And if it seems lazy to you, why'd you respond?
Stop expecting it to be anything else.
Maybe it is lazy and it works. Maybe your marks, to borrow a wrestling term, your rage marks. What have we talked about before? Cape baiting. Because you show up with your William Nylander cape and go, what? No one is allowed to say that. Whoosh, and then you fly, and you get back into a telephone booth because you got to go back to your job after saving the day. Like,
Steve, I feel like it's a little disingenuous for the guy who made his living off of yelling and screaming about his favorite hockey team to be criticizing fans for coming to the defense of their favorite players and teams.
But you don't need to do it with Steve.
I'm letting people know what's happening. What's happening.
They're goading you is what they're doing. Because like, here's the thing: a pro William Nylander click or an anti William Nylander click is a click. They don't care, and so they put it on the front page because they know it's going to sell. They put it out there prominently on their Twitter account because they know it's going to garner a reaction. This is all money based, guys. That's the whole point. Steve Simmons makes a lot of money to do what he does, and you're falling for it every time.
What do you want him to write about Jimmy Vesey? No one gives a shit.
No one cares. Like, honestly, no one cares. And that's why he does it. He goes, you know what? Who's the easy target? I'm punching down. Let's go. And that's what he does. And that's okay. There's room for that. And and do I fault Post Media for doing it? No, they're a company that makes money off advertising. If I was running Post Media, I'd be like, throw Steve Simmons up there every time. Every time. Why? Because he garners clicks and it makes our advertisers happy. That's all I give a shit about. And that's all they care about.
Yeah,
so
there's
keep
evidence
that in mind.
There's evidence that I don't have access to, but I'm sure they do, that proves this works.
Yes.
That's why they're doing it.
Of course.
Proves this works. Do you think the New York Post was upset with Larry Brooks the other day? No. That doesn't make the article good. But a lot of people clicked on it. Jesse, what did you say last show? I didn't click on Steve Simmons' article. I didn't click on Larry Brooks's. I don't click. A lot of people did.
And also, when you click on the article and then share it publicly, you're still encouraging people to click on it. Oh, I screenshotted it and I shared it. Well, people are going to be like, well, then I'm going to go look at the whole thing. Stop.
Depending on
the information, just cut it off.
Depending on where you clicked it, you're also encouraging different algorithms to show you it more.
Oh, that's true.
You are. If you click it on Facebook or Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, and no one seems to want to talk about that. Instagram's this other thing. Don't worry about it. No, it's not. yeah, it works. That's why they keep doing it. And guess what? He's going to do it again.
He is. Get ready. Next week, William Nylander still sucks.
And the conversation's so broken around William Nylander because he was super criticizable. And people took it to the umpteenth degree. Then last year, he's awesome. And he turns into this net front god and has over 30 goals in a season that ended up getting cut short. Could have scored 40. He could have realistically scored 40.
He had a chance.
He did have a chance, an outside chance, but he had a chance. And then people made it an eat shit parade for the past couple of years. And now there's no middle ground. There is none. There are only two extremely opposite end of the spectrum factions where you can't even have an honest conversation about, Nylander's looked off for like 3 games. That's all I said. And I got people yelling at me. I'm like, I'm not your uncle. I'm just, look at him. You looked. And like now you don't even believe your eyes. The evidence of your eyes and ears. You don't even believe it. And then in the 2-1 win against Ottawa, he looked better. He looked better. Like, there is no truth anymore with William Nylander, whether he's bad or good. There's no more truth. There's just what you happen to believe.
Here's the probable explanation. He's pretty good.
Yeah.
He's usually pretty good.
Usually pretty good. He's got off nights and flaws, but that's why he makes $7 million and not $11 million.
Yeah, he's probably worth around $7 million.
Yeah, I would say he's worth about $7 million.
Players, goals become their oxygen. We've talked about that. And Willie's been taken off the top power play unit to great effect, by the way. Not for him, but for the team. They have the best power play in the league, I think, or at least they did for some time in terms of percentage. So taking him off the top power play has worked for the team, but for him, it seems to have sort of thrown off his swagger. Mm-hmm. But last game, he seemed to, I think he read a thing or two because, or more realistically, he was yelled at by Sheldon Keefe. And he tried much, much harder. Because it's, for me, like to even criticize, he doesn't go to the spots where Matthews and Marner go. Forget the fact that that's objectively false. I don't think that was the thing I saw in him that I didn't like. Like for me, it was like going into the corner, not even having like a vision of body contact in your head. Like you just sort of flail your stick around like a musketeer, and it accomplishes nothing. And like there was a criticism I saw a few years ago that Kyle Dubas I think liked on Twitter, and people were like, "Ooh, shade," someone said William Nylander does things so effortlessly that it looks like he's not trying, and I've taken that to heart as I watch him, and I'm like, yeah, no, it looks like he's not trying, but he is.
It's not untrue,
It's not untrue, but the past few games, I'm like, he's straight up just kind of lazy.
It's not an
last game wasn't that.
It's not an excuse for his lack of play at times, but it's also not untrue in how he plays the game. There's a little middle ground with it.
If I tried to be funny on my own, people might laugh. If I tried to be funny around Steve, people are going to be like, who the fuck are you? And why the reason I say that is Tavares and Nylander and the criticism they've taken, people are taking them and they're comparing them to Marner and Matthews. And I think it's an unfair comparison. John Tavares did have seasons where he's in 90, close to 100 points or whatever. And in his first year here had a great start, or 47 goals or whatever he had. The whole idea that John Tavares is somehow not an elite point producer anymore is, I think that's a little bit of a stretch considering we're pretty early, and he still had a pretty good year last year, even though it was a down year. I think the other thing is when you are playing with Matthews and Marner and you are making the same amount of money in them as them, you're going to be judged against how they do. But the reality is that's not what John Tavares is in here to do on the same level. And he's not 22. And he's not Like he's so many different things. I think it's really unfair to take a guy like that and compare him to Marner and Matthews because they're a whole nother level right now.
I have a comment and a question.
Sure.
My comment is, Adam, you are funny. Funny looking. High five, high five, high five. The question is, do you guys hear what we've been talking about for the past 10 minutes? We've been talking about William Nylander's lack of production and John Tavares' lack of production. The catalyst for this conversation in the market was the Leafs were up 5-1 and blew it. And we're talking about the second line's offensive production.
You know, John Tavares was a part of that.
Yeah,
he was. That's not what was criticized.
Do we need to also, can we also just admit that Freddie Andersen's just not as good as he used to be? Can we finally admit that?
I don't know if that's the case, because I don't think he was ever what we think he was. You know, I think this is what Freddie has been for the past, 4 years now?
Like when I look at where he was on the breakaway in overtime, was it overtime?
He looks smaller.
Yeah, the OT one in Ottawa.
Because his blocker was blocking his own pad.
I saw that on Twitter too. It's like I'm not a goalie coach. Like I don't know,
guys.
I don't know the technical of what's going on there.
One thing is for sure in my mind: he's not back next year. He's not.
No.
They're not re-signing him.
I agree with that.
So what do you have now to take you forward into the playoffs? And Steve, I think you made a really great point last episode, and I know we're running out of time. You said Hutch is going to have to start one of these 3 games. You're probably right. Freddie's probably exhausted, right?
He's played 15 out of 17. And the whole exciting conversation heading into this year is not only do the Leafs have a backup that can play and win games, but their starter's going to be even better because he's going to get rest. Well, now Freddie's played all but 2 games. That's not good enough. And I understand the reason why, but now you have a back-to-back against the league's worst team, and you're in first place. Play your friggin' backup. I don't care if you lose even. I don't care. You're 12-3-2. You can lose a game. I would say it's even better to lose a game potentially. Put yourself in a position to fail. By setting yourself up for success in the future by letting your goalie rest.
You're right.
I don't want Freddie playing 3 and 4 with number 4 coming against the Habs.
Yeah.
I should have admitted it last episode. You were bang on. You were bang on when you said that. You're absolutely right. Nailed it.
You nailed the Montreal game, though, because they win that game. And I disagree with the wrapped up thing, but they're sitting pretty.
You guys, they're 12-3-2.
They could be.
What are we complaining?
14-1-2.
They should be.
They could be 16-0. No,
they should be
15-17-0.
17. I don't know.
They should be 56-0 at the end of this year. Anything else is unacceptable.
Like that's
I want to win the regular season. I want to win the regular season.
I want to win whatever trophy that is. Losses. That's ridiculous. What is the expectations here?
The expectation they win every fucking night, Jesse.
Yeah, that's absurd.
It's a winner's mentality. They grind.
All right.
Sorry, you're right.
Jesse,
you're right.
This 12-3-2, Freddie's good.
Valentine's Day might be over, fellas, but that doesn't mean you can take your eye off the ball. See what I did there? It's because we're talking about Manscaped. And our friends at Manscaped, the global leaders in men's below-the-waist grooming, are here to tell you that you need the best tools for the job so you can be ready for anything, special day or not. In fact, most days are not special days. You still want to be ready. 2 million men are already using Manscaped products to groom. So make sure you're one of them. The best way to get started with Manscaped is the Perfect Package 3.0, full of the best products to keep you looking, smelling, and feeling nice. It's also waterproof, which prevents a mess in the bathroom, on the floor, and in the sink. You should also check out the Crop Preserver and the Crop Reviver because these products smell good. Very important. The Perfect Package 3.0 also comes with a pair of Manscaped boxers. Why not? It's time to upgrade your underwear. Let's be honest. We wear them a little bit too long, a little bit past their due date. Manscaped wants to help you in that. And these are high-performance, anti-chafing boxers. Easily the comfiest boxers I've ever used. I'm wearing them right now. Do you want to see? I won't show you. And after you're done with your grooming game, check out the new refined cologne Signature Scent by Manscaped. With the same signature scent that's in all Manscaped formulas, this cologne is a perfect complement to the collection. This is the perfect package to make your package perfect, if you will. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SDP at manscaped.com. Your balls and others. Well, thank you. So you're having a nothing week, huh?
Yeah. It's been a bit hectic. There have been a few glasses of wine that have been drank.
Do you? I've always wondered this. Like, it's sort of like on the other show on the radio this week. We were talking about the song "Beat It," and we were like, "Do you think that Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones knew that song was going to be as big as that song was before they released it? When they were the only two people in the world to have ever heard it? Did you know that this article was going to send shockwaves well beyond the state of Arizona, right through hockey about the Arizona Coyotes before you wrote it, or not before you wrote it, but before you released it?"
No, not quite the magnitude that it did. And here's why. Like, I think I was working on that story for so long that it really distorts your ability to see like the forest through the trees. Like, I had to ask my editor in the sort of couple days before it ran, I'm like, is this story even good? Like, am I saying something here? I'm saying something, right? Like this reporting, really reveals some themes here, right? And he's like, "You're fine. You've been doing this for far too long. You need to go take a break."
Did you? I want to know about the construction of the article, because it reads like a horror movie to me. Because the beginning of it, you're bringing me in gently, but you brought the reader in gently, like, oh, there's this new owner, and here are some nice things that he tried to do, and then every item that you placed in the story made me more uncomfortable than the last.
Yeah, no kidding.
It felt like the murder mystery where they tell you, like, oh, the guy was a nice family man, and then he ends up murdering his family.
I always joke with my friends like that the murderer next door. So I was like, seemed really like a nice, quiet guy. Kept his trash out. No, I mean, that wasn't. I mean, yes, that was. I will say this. I have a wonderful editor, George Dorman, who is an incredible investigative journalist. He won a Pulitzer at some crazy age, like 26 or something. He always makes me feel really shitty about myself. But he's a terrific editor, and he's really good at structure, and that's not a strong suit of mine. So we're a good team in that way, that he tells me kind of how he envisions putting together the information that I had. But, I did think it was important actually to the story to kind of share, some context and some background, and the fact that, there was quite a bit of hope and optimism about this guy when he bought the team. Because I think that really shows, I think there's quite a contrast once people started to see what his philosophies would look like once they were implemented, and how drastically different they felt about the ownership, once they began making more of their philosophical imprint on the organization.
The article, by the way, and we should have shouted this out right off the top, but we're a mess. So dysfunction in the desert, finger pointing, fear, and financial woes, roil the Coyotes organization. This is in The Athletic currently, and it blew up. So Katie, I mean, we got everything from here, from the Mitchell Miller stuff to potential sexual misconduct allegations to we're talking verbal abuse allegations. There is a lot here. And it's funny because every time you hit like a picture or something, you think, oh, that's got to be the end of the article. And then it's something else. And I guess I don't even know where to start, but I would like to start maybe with the thing that people understand the most and we've heard the most about, which is the Mitchell Miller stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was sort of a really big story. And then obviously John Shayka leading into that, which we can get to in a second. But, you mentioned it in the article, and without giving too much of it away, it kind of gets into explaining not only just that situation, but a mental health trainer who raised concerns beforehand, correct?
Yeah. So my understanding, what my reporting revealed was that, there was obviously significant upheaval in the front office between the scouting department's final draft meeting in June and when the draft took place in October. And so under the previous regime in June, they had this big draft meeting, as most teams do, and they discussed Mitchell Miller, who was, skill-wise considered to be a top prospect. And there were a number of concerns raised about him stemming not only from this issue, but I should add his lack of transparency and what they felt was perhaps a lack of remorse about the situation as well. And in totality, kind of combining those things with the act itself, that he was convicted for racist bullying and taunting of a Black disabled classmate in middle school, they took him off their draft board. They said, like, we're not going to draft this kid. That's that. And sometime in between that to, there being significant turnover to the draft in October, a lot of teams also made that deduction that they were going to take him off their draft board. And then obviously the Coyotes made that very fateful pick. And so it led to a lot of finger pointing, in this like daily sense of shifting blame for, who was responsible for that. And, what you saw was a very dramatic about face in terms of the front facing communication from the organization about that pick. If you remember that when the pick was first made, it actually didn't get a ton of traction. The Arizona Republic did a great story on it a few weeks later. There was massive outcry, and the Coyotes originally kind of tried to spin it as, we talk about inclusivity and diversity, and this is an example of us willing to be open-minded and work with this individual to, in a sense, rehabilitate him or make him a sort of productive, member of society and help him seek help and, treatment or whatever. But then the outrage, I think, just got too much for them, and they cut bait on him like a day or two later.
Right. And then there's the John Shayka situation, obviously, which you get into a little bit, but really, when you're talking about the ownership group, they seem to stress family and then do exactly what you wouldn't want your family members to do.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I this quote didn't make it in the piece, but I remember asking a current employee, for all this talk about family, like, what do you make of that? And he was like, shit, this is a pretty dysfunctional family. And, I think that is one of those, that's sort of Alex Morello's underlying ethos that he preaches, not just within the Coyotes, but with his other business endeavors too, is this idea of family and that, we're in this together and we need to treat each other like we would family. And that notion is what many employees, both current and former, find, offensive, disingenuous, laughable, etc. A lot of people said to me, like, when he's saying that, he means his family, and that the people that are within his inner circle, but we are not being treated as family. This is not how families operate. This is not how you would treat someone like you would want your family members to be treated.
Katie, I'm very confused because you mentioned current employees of the Arizona Coyotes, and I heard from a very reliable source called the Arizona Coyotes that it was only disgruntled former employees. Did you actually talk to current employees of the Arizona Coyotes?
I did, and that was, I think, conveniently overlooked by them, when they were assailing my reporting. I think to try to chalk it up to a few disgruntled employees is pretty reductive. And I think, the appropriate thing probably would have been to be a bit more introspective and reflective of why there were, current and former employees who were sharing this information and sharing their experiences with me and what that says about their experience in the workplace as it stands. But, I put the work in there, which is that, I spoke to over 50 people, and that includes current and former employees, as well as people that, have longstanding business relationships with the team, who regularly do business with the team, who interact with the team in a variety of different capacities.
Well, okay. So I know that you did speak to one current employee because it's confirmed at the beginning of the article. That current employee, we know, lectured you on journalism, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And his name is?
Bill Armstrong.
Right. So when you hear from a general manager like that, on a personal level, is that jarring?
I mean, that conversation was definitely jarring. I would, that's an appropriate, if not generous, characterization of that. So I would say it's not uncommon to hear from GMs who are either upset at what you have written, upset with your like sort of avenues of inquiry when you're reporting. Like, that's very typical stuff. I've dealt with that, throughout my career, and especially more now as I do more, the bulk of my work now is investigative work. And that often leads me kind of to the underbelly or the more sordid, difficult subject matter. Like, I don't write about rainbows and unicorns. So it's generally something that is going to piss people off. So that is not uncommon. I would say the nature of that phone call and the tenor of that phone call was pretty wild. And to the sense that like, I definitely like made a bunch of calls afterwards and was like, that was very unusual. And, I don't.
He insinuated you were stealing, and he insinuated you would go to jail, correct?
Oh, no, actually that's initially what I thought he was saying. And I kind of tried to clarify that with him, because I did initially think he was accusing me of committing a cybercrime. But then I think he seemed to believe that someone internally was stealing his information, or externally was stealing his information and funneling that information with me. I'm not quite clear if he thought that like I had a sort of direct role in that, or was just the recipient, but he made it very clear that he was unhappy that he thought that was happening and that he thought that was wrong. I made it very clear to him that I felt he was bypassing a pretty obvious explanation that was much more plausible, which is that I am a good reporter. He did not seem to think that was a viable explanation. And so I don't typically, include interactions like that in a story just because I'm loath to inject myself into any story. But the reason that I did is because I felt like the behavior was germane to the story itself. When you are writing about paranoia and fear and bullying and threats and intimidation, and then you have people, who are extensions of that organization exhibiting some of those hallmark behaviors, I do think that is instructive to include in the piece. And in some ways, I think you can learn more about an organization by the way they act and the way they react to what you're looking into than by getting any sort of like exclusive one-on-one interview. And so that's why I included it in the piece. I thought it was important for people to know.
What has the response from the league been? We know the Coyotes released this statement trying to denounce the article, but has there any been like internal talk from the owners or Bettman specifically about what's written in the piece?
I would imagine there are some conversations being had. I have not been in contact with the league about this. I can tell you that last week I went to the league to let them know that I was going to be publishing this story this week, that I felt like there was significant content that they'd like to, weigh in on or comment on. They politely declined to do that, which is their prerogative. And I circled back with them on Monday, the day before the piece published, and I did present to them a list of very detailed questions, laying out some specific elements of the story that I felt warranted a response. They, again, declined to comment. So it's hard for me to know exactly what the dialogue has been, among league officials or, with the league and the Coyotes, or with the league even and, other owners and the board of governors. So I don't have a great answer for you on that. I'm very curious to see how the league will handle this, but I don't have any firsthand information at this point of how they feel.
Going back to Bill Armstrong for a second, I correct me if I'm wrong. I think one of the things he mentioned was, what if I went around the league and told other GMs, about your methods of reporting, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Have you heard from any other league executives since the story has been released?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've heard from quite a few, and like universally supportive. And, I think there were some people that were really upset to hear that that was his approach. And, there's some people, just kind of let me know that they read the story and that they were not pleased with what they had read. So, that was nice, but that was never a concern for me. That to me that would never deter me. And I think, it was such a sort of a jarring moment. And I was so kind of taken aback by some of the things that were said, but I from my recollection of it, I do remember saying that I felt very confident with my reputation around the league, and that I work very, very hard at what I do, and I think that's reflected in the quality of my work, and that I don't think he could tell GMs whatever he wants like that. But I think most know how I operate and the extent to which I go to do my due diligence and to provide fair, accurate, nuanced, thorough reporting.
And to be clear, you have not received an apology from him?
No.
Okay.
And I don't need, honestly, I don't need.
No. I didn't think you did, but I did want to say, he's had an opportunity to cool off and think about this. And I just wanted to know. And here's what I will say, just both about sort of the statement in which, they came after myself and my publication and that incident is I'm a big girl, believe me. And this is not the first time I've gone through something like this, and it sure as shit will not be the last. But what I can tell you is that when that statement was released, I would rather have them come after me or come after the Athletic than go after employees or retaliate in any ways against their employees, because those are the people who are really in a tough situation right now. And I wouldn't have written this story if it weren't for, employees who were in a really tight spot in a precarious position and who felt like they had zero form of recourse, besides talking to a reporter, because things were, in their mind so toxic and dysfunctional, and there was no help on the way. Just a couple more questions for you, Katie, because this, it's just such an unbelievable piece and there's so many angles on it, but I have to ask, what even tips you off to start something like this? What's the thing you go, I got to look into that a little further.
Yeah. So I think because I deal in some of the more underbelly type stories, I think, people come to me a lot with tips, and which is wonderful. And I'm, buried in them sometimes. And I wish I could give all of them the appropriate amount of attention that they deserve. But what tipped me off to this, and I don't generally do pieces about financial impropriety or anything like that. Like
missing bonus checks to players, things like that.
Yeah. So that is actually what tipped me off is I had heard some generalized grumbling in the playoff bubble that players weren't getting per diem and that there were some weird things going on. And so I just kind of put that, filed it away and put it on the back burner. And then I had heard that players were missing, were not getting paid their signing bonuses on time, which is no small thing, right? That's something that the union will hop on right away because that's part of a standard players contract. It's collectively bargained. It's not it's not a suggestion, when you pay a guy his signing bonus, he needs to get it on a certain date. So once I started kind of pulling string there and reporting that out, I found out that there was a large outstanding balance with their arena management company that was several months overdue. And so I started to maybe kind of think, what else is there that I don't know? And so I would just kind of keep following these facts and talking to people and asking every single person, who else should I be talking to? And I'll tell you that we almost published this story at multiple different junctures. And invariably, every time that we were on the precipice of publishing the story, something else wild would happen. And so we would hold off and we would kind of push it down the road. And it became one of those things that I've given birth to 2 children, and this kind of felt like a third, like it lived so long that it was a bit of a relief to get off my plate. I felt like people thought I was like just stalling and procrastinating, and I wasn't. It was just a matter of like, we knew that we had to kind of keep going, and we owed it to the story to keep going, and that we would know when the story was there. And it took a while. It took probably 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
We learned a great deal from it, from your work. Have you learned anything since?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Is there a Coyotes Tube?
So there are definitely elements of that story that I want to dig in on further, and I plan to do so. I can tell you that they had a town hall meeting with their employees after the story ran that day, and they told them, hey, we want to really stress like that there's an open door policy here. We want to be transparent and stress honesty, and we want to be here to hear your concerns, complaints, criticisms. On that same call, they also said, we also want to reiterate that speaking to the media is grounds for dismissal. So, I think there were people on that call that, may have been sort of heartened by some of the intentions of this idea of like transparency and honesty, and really kind of digging deep to think about some of the things that were expressed, but then, kind of felt like it was window dressing. And so,
right.
That just kind of gives you a glimpse into what's going on.
Because if you're an employee and you come forward, they're going to be like, oh, they've got questions and concerns. They probably spoke to the media. Like, it sort of puts a bit of a target on you, don't you think?
Yeah. It's not just that. It's that, like, people, this is a workforce that has been whittled significantly over the past year, and especially exacerbated by COVID. And so there's like this fear that if you're going to be a squeaky wheel, that you will be shown the door. And, one of the parts in my piece, like that I stressed, was there's this never ending like specter of litigation too, that people are scared of like getting sued. This is a person of ample means and resources. Like, no one wants to take that on. That's scary. Like, especially in a pandemic when you're relying on paychecks and like health insurance to feed your family. And so, there are a number of things that I would like to follow up on. Some of the financial stuff I would like to dig in a little further. I will say that I heard from several employees that I did not talk to who said, hey, I just want to let you know that even though I didn't talk to you for this piece, I really saw my experience at the company reflected in your piece. And I wanted to reach out just to thank you for that. And that made me feel really good. Like that even, I cold called a ton of people, right? And like, some people hang up, some people don't talk, some people do talk. But that even the people that I didn't get a chance to talk to felt like they recognized their experience in the piece.
Wow. Well, it is and I don't think anybody will disagree with me here, Katie, this is a breathtaking, knock you off your feet piece of journalism. Like there's no other way to describe it. Like, I don't think I've ever read anything that blew my mind in terms of just the depth and the breadth of this story. So, congratulations on telling the story the way it is, and hopefully it creates meaningful change, right? Because when these things are uncovered, oftentimes it can lead to good changes, although it sounds like they're up to their old tricks. And based on the culture that you kind of showcase in the article, it doesn't seem like there's a desire to want to change. They seem to be perfectly happy the way they are, but all the same, hope that there is positivity that comes out of this one way or the other. And you are a phenomenal journalist. And we just needed to say, holy shit, blown away, incredible. Like, wow. So thank you for making time for us today. It's been an honor to have you on.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me on, guys.
Thank you, Katie.
For a certain kind of sports fan, the most important part of a game isn't always who wins and loses. Whether you're sweating out a late field goal to hit an over or watching nervously as a three-pointer in garbage time makes or breaks your four-leg parlay, having skin in the game completely transforms the fan experience. And that's why The Athletic is excited to announce the launch of its exclusive U.S. partnership with BetMGM and its new sport betting hub. sports betting coverage at The Athletic will deliver all the insights, analysis, and original reporting subscribers have come to expect, plus fully integrated live odds and special offers from BetMGM. So even though Super Bowl 55 is now behind us, there's still plenty of great action, whether you're talking NBA, NHL, college basketball, golf, and soon enough, the MLB. And I know this, I'm going to be looking at hockey. It's chaotic, it's fun, and I'm going to get into it. Right now, BetMGM is offering Steve Dangle Podcast listeners a risk-free first bet up to $600. Just sign up at betmgm.com and use the bonus code TheAthleticPod to take advantage of this special offer from the king of sportsbooks. This offer for new customers, that's a risk-free first bet up to $600 at betmgm.com with the bonus code TheAthleticPod. Visit betmgm.com for terms and conditions. Must be 21 years of age or older to wager. Colorado, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia only. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, Nevada, and Virginia. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. And 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. In Tennessee, call or text the red line at 800-899-9789. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. Promotional offer not available in Nevada. You know, I meant what I said there. Like,
I can
I've
tell.
never read anything like that.
Adam,
Ever.
you've clearly never read This Team is Ruining My Life.
Man, but what happened at the zoo, Jesse? Tell me.
Wow. There's so many chapters on the zoo. If you
There is
those,
exactly one chapter on the zoo. Wait, no, there's two. Shit. Damn it.
And then I love that Jesse. It's like page 197. Oh yeah, by the way, I started a podcast. Adam and Jesse, you're fine.
If I'm ranking journalism, if I'm ranking like, writing awards, it's like, okay, This Team is Ruining My Life is up here. Mm-hmm. Down here, everything ever written in The Athletic. And like third is like Shakespeare and all the rest.
But like, I don't even understand Shakespeare. Like, when is he going to speak English? You know what I mean? Everybody? Am I right?
Don't forget to buy Steve's best-selling book, This Team is Ruining My Life. I can't wait for part 2. Because there's such a where it ends is like, oh man, like because I was there, it's like this is where things got going. This is where shit got really exciting. So I hope there is a part 2 coming.
Like Sportsnet, you know?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even get in there.
Yeah, well, and now like so much, like what I keep telling people, when's part 2 coming? I'm like, let me live my life. I need to live some life in order for part 2.
There's like 6-7 years of good stories there, though, man.
Well, I've started examining it, and I'm like, okay, yeah, no, there's a bunch of shit that's not in there. So, yeah,
I'm excited.
Keep cool, my babies.
So, yeah, again, I want to shout out that article. Katie Strang, Dysfunction in the Desert, Finger Pointing, Fear and Financial Woes, Roil, the Coyotes organization. And it's one of the best pieces we've ever read. And honestly, wow, what a moment. It was, you know, what's interesting too, is there was such an attack on her once this came out, and you've got everybody in the industry, regardless of whether or not they are affiliated with The Athletic, like TSN, Sportsnet, people all going, holy shit, Katie, well done.
Right. It's they took the Coyotes, in their response appeared to take the anti-media route, which will work on a lot of people. But I did appreciate the industry as a whole going, Katie Strang? That's your target? Are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
And I'm so not surprised by your reaction, because the second I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to answer every question Adam has ever had.
Our first show.
We were just talking about them.
Our first effing show, though, our first show ever, one of the topics was, when are they folding the Coyotes and moving them? And it's not because of the fans. It's because they've never, ever had a successful organization there. And it's sort of like you wonder if the reason they can't find a good owner is because it's not a good investment.
Wow.
It's because good owners
that's very clear at this time that they've been trying to make hockey in Arizona work, and for 25 years it hasn't worked.
And I'm not saying it couldn't, but it's sort of like at 25 years you don't even have a rink. You know, We're not even in Phoenix. Okay.
Well, and like,
so that's the issue for me, is that like there's been a lot of puts and starts, and I'm probably painting a bit with a broad brush here, and I'm not targeting Coyotes fans, because honestly, to be a Coyotes fan has got to be the hardest thing in the world. What an impossible organization to want to hand your money over to right now, and forever since the dawn of time. But the reality is, the reason a good business person, and really a sports franchise is a play toy. It's a thing to say, look at what I got.
Yeah.
Right. You've made it. You're in the billionaires club when you own a sports team in North America or in Europe or wherever else. But if you own the Coyotes, it's sort of like, well, we found someone. Thank God. Shh, no one tell them. And
don't show them the books.
Don't. Yeah. And in the article, it talks about how they had a 2-year path to profitability. Whoa.
Well,
I mean, even non-pandemic.
Methods, the financial methods, basically, we talked about with Katie, them paying employees late. It wasn't just about that. There were certain vendors who allegedly were not only paid late, but when they said something about it, they're like, all right, let's negotiate.
Yeah, work with us on this.
Yeah, and they'd get
no,
pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a whole thing about napkins in there. It's fucking wild. It's just wild.
Oh, not expensing like cab rides and it's just infuriating. What's relatable about it is it happens to be about the Arizona Coyotes, but for you, the listener, or you, the reader, it's every bad boss ever. Like it's every bad workplace ever. They pay late. They they haggle for your pay. They make you feel like shit. Like it's every bad workplace ever.
Right. Well, it's again, like I said, I hope it does create some good change there. I mean, whether they change because they had to or not, hopefully it changes something, because obviously something needs to change. And I also think, honestly, guys, if it doesn't work out with the Morello group, I don't think it's going to work. And it seems to be, to me anyway, there is just something rotten. They don't have, and I think if you were to look at the way the NHL did it back in 1996 when they went from Winnipeg to Arizona, I think if Gary Bettman knew then what he knows now, he would have set him up like Vegas. Not that they were an expansion team, but he would have been like, well, who's the owner? And what's the rank? And what's this? And what's that? What's all happening here? And you look at the success of the Vegas franchise and you go, the NHL gets it with relocation and expansion now. And I think the Kraken are a good example. They've got an incredible ownership group led by the Lewicki's, who we know well in Toronto and Los Angeles knows extremely well. They're incredible. Like, what a group. I think it's only a matter of time before this team moves, guys. There's just no other way.
You'll never get a straight answer from Bettman, but I wonder what he would say behind the scenes, because you brought up a great point. Bettman was only like 4 years into being the commissioner or something like that when the Coyotes moved. Like, I'm sure he's learned a lot since then, and he's probably got regrets.
Well, and you look at certain markets that are great on paper, i.e. Atlanta, are just not going to be the markets that you want them to be. And that doesn't mean that hockey couldn't come back to Atlanta in 10 years and succeed. But you can't do it the way they tried to do it with the Thrashers and they tried to do it with the Flames before that. You can't strangle the baby in the cradle, right? You have to actually give them a shot at being successful right away so they can make a bang. And I think the Coyotes team that showed up in Phoenix originally was a pretty good team, but you've never had a good management group, never had a good ownership group, never had a great fan base outside of the hardcores, because you never had a specific place where they were playing all the time. And I look at it like, look at what Kansas City and Quebec City have. They've got a place to play. Do they not?
Yeah, they both do. Quebec isn't technically, I don't think it wouldn't be up there with the NHL standard.
It'd be like Winnipeg level, right?
Yeah.
Winnipeg's about 15,000. Because the thing is, the Winnipeg group doesn't matter, right? They can lose money hand over fist and it really doesn't matter. They're insanely rich. But my question is, okay, if you want to keep 32 teams in the league, which they do as of next year, do you want, let's say there's no market you can move the Coyotes to that's profitable. I would ask you this. Is there a market I can move the Coyotes to that's less in the red? Meaning, if I'm going to lose $20 in Arizona per year, but I'd lose 10 in Kansas City or 15 in Quebec City, wouldn't I then want to move them there?
Well, what's keeping them afloat right now is TV money. And Arizona, as we've talked about many times, is so key to the TV money. So I don't think so, man. I don't know if there's a solution here other than, like, you know, we talked about like the financial issues of the Coyotes, and that doesn't seem to be the big issue here. The issue is stop treating people like shit.
Well, they're missing payments though.
All right.
Yeah, but that seems like it's by choice because they know they can.
Mismanagement. Yeah.
It's
okay.
It's doing wrong by people. I don't like mismanagement is, I think, when you make a mistake. This if you read Katie Strang's article, it certainly seems intentional and built into their business model, which is wrong.
I also don't hate the idea of Houston.
Yeah,
the market. I feel like
Honestly.
it's not talked about enough because it's in the same general area, and I think you might get because of the higher population, you might just get more people who care.
And isn't it like 6, 7, like 6th or 7th in the entire United States in terms of amount of people there, like in population?
Really,
top 10.
really big. It is top 10. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think there are other options. Like you get into a little bit of trouble when you try and take an American franchise and move into Canada just because of the dollars and the amount of money it brings in the Canadian dollars. But I think there are options outside of Arizona just because you've tried for 25 years. Maybe it's time to stop trying. And that's, like we said, it's not about the fans. It's about
it isn't.
Just, hey, this experiment didn't work. Like at some point you have to admit that it didn't work if it's going to continually not work.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, guys. I think the solution here is just the owner needs to not be such an asshole.
Right. Yeah.
So
that helps.
You try again with another guy.
I mean, they've been trying this long. It's
like me with relationships.
I also feel bad, like now, because now I'm invested in Arizona, like because we ragged on them and we were like, oh, just move them already, and we heard from enough Coyotes fans that I'm now cheering for them.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? I'm cheering for the.
We heard from the Coyotes fans.
Hey, you with you.
We did.
We
and it's not the fans' fault. They didn't give them anything to cheer for, and they didn't give them an arena to cheer in. Like, what are they
like the heyday of the Coyotes is when Gretzky was their head coach. Like, that's the peak of their franchise right now. And when we look at their history, right?
In terms of relevancy?
In terms of relevancy,
really?
That's the peak of their franchise.
I was like, bro, they made the Final Four. What the?
I think in terms of when people cared about the Coyotes, it's when Gretzky was there. And and like if at that point, like if that's your peak, it's at some point cut the cord.
I would say probably 2012 because
was that the furthest they got?
The conference final, yeah.
Okay.
They did really well. The building was full, and they had something that Atlanta never had. The Thrashers, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the Thrashers ever won a playoff game.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They won the very shitty Southeast Division one year and played the Rangers in the 3-6 matchup and got swept because Sean Avery drove Ilya Kovalchuk out of his mind. Remember that?
Yep. I'm just looking now. Because, here's the Coyotes that I think when they were at their absolute, like, best, game after game after game, year after year after year, to me, that was probably the Kachuk, Jani, Roenick, Habibulin years, wouldn't you say?
Briere
was great, and obviously Shane Doan was there the entire time.
Yep.
And this is the funny thing. When an article like this comes out,
they were good when they first got there.
You know, it's gotten into Toronto people's minds about Austin Matthews ever since Brian Burke made that comment on The Fan about, well, after the 5 years, he's going back home. Do you think he's going back home to that? I don't think so. If the Coyotes were a well-run, slick, good operation with a great arena and it's an incredible lifestyle to live in Arizona. I mean, all you have to do is follow any of their players, and they're like sitting on their rooftops and watching the sun go down because it's such a gorgeous place to live. It's in a beautiful area of the world. It's like the golf is amazing. The lifestyle is incredible. But if you think that a player like that is going to actively go, yeah, you know what? I'm going to leave the Toronto Maple Leafs to go to an organization that can't pay its players on time or intentionally doesn't pay its players on time. I mean, you're dreaming. And Berkey knew, I think Berkey must have known that when he said it. Like, I think he knew the Coyotes were not a really well-run organization even back then when he made the comment pre this ownership group, and nothing's changed. So whenever somebody says that, it's like, do you know what team you're talking about here? It'd be different if it was the Rangers. Like if he'd grown up in the Bronx and was Austin Matthews and was like, well, he might be a Ranger, I'd be like, oh, I'm inclined to believe you. If he grew up in Boston, if he grew up in any of the California, close to one of the California teams, I would be inclined to believe you. But the Arizona Coyotes, I don't think there's any question, are probably the worst run organization in the NHL right now.
And very interesting in there is what tipped off Katie Strang, as she said, was the signing bonuses being paid late to players. And I think part of the reason that became public and became such a big stink, the players have a union. Mm-hmm. The players have a union that will protect them and stick up for them. All these other vendors in the article, if you haven't read it yet, you have to. All these poor other small businesses, what are they supposed to do? They don't have a union who's going to stick up for them.
Yep.
It's bleak. It's a depressing read, but like I said, it's structured in a way that really does bring you down the rabbit hole. And there's also, she did a podcast too. Well, she actually just did ours, so maybe don't listen to the other one.
Yes, I don't know to say it.
What are you doing?
That's so funny.
From what was it, 96, from when they moved from Winnipeg to in 1996 until 2009, all the Coyotes did was lose money. And then 2009, the franchise had to file for bankruptcy, and then the NHL bought them, and then the NHL owned them for 4 years. The league owned the team, and then they finally sold it in 2013. And since then, all they've continued to do is still lose money. Yes. I don't know what the solution is here.
Revenue share.
Bankrupt NHL franchise is just continuing to lose money.
Well, and look at this too, because they had a really good start. They lost in the quarterfinals each of their first 4 years in Arizona. Then they missed the playoffs.
Went bankrupt.
And then they lost in the quarterfinals.
Like I'm not talking about their win-loss record.
I get. Oh, I know what you're saying, but I'm adding on to that point, which is if you were to look at it from a 2002 perspective, this is a team that's made the playoffs 5 of the last 6 years. And in fact, if you go back to the Jets, it's 6 of the last 7. So it's a shame because they did get a running start with the quality of the team that was there. And if it wasn't profitable in that time frame, when you got a playoff team 5 or 6 years, I don't know. And really, when you look at Steve, when you talk about the NHL TV deal, regional
in the States
is mattering less and less now because of the digital age, right? At one point, it was a huge deal, but now it's sort of like, well, people are watching from around the world. Like you can just take that audience and the streaming audience, whatever. And that's why things like blackouts eventually will disappear.
I still don't understand them.
I don't understand them either. They serve no purpose other than to piss off fans, which are already pretty mad. But I would say that if I'm looking at the next TV deal and my TV deal hinges on the Arizona Coyotes existing or not, I don't think it's a good TV deal to begin with. And I think you have to, nobody's watching the games. Nobody's watching. They get no ratings. So what do you need it for? And when that disappears, the impetus to keep the team in Arizona will disappear with it. Meaning that if that is what's propped up the Coyotes franchise, which missed the playoffs, I want to say from 02 to 03, they made the playoffs since 02 and 03 3 times since 02, 03. 02, 03.
Since then they made the playoffs. Oh, wow.
3 times.
Wow.
The impetus to keep them there beyond the billionaire that currently owns them is gone. And how long does this guy want to lose money for? Because it's COVID. We're all going to lose money. We're all losing money. Everybody's losing money.
But it's okay, Adam. Their future's very bright. Their first pick was 142nd overall this past draft. If you take out Mitchell Miller, their first pick was in the 5th round.
And don't they lose?
That's a joke.
Isn't the renounced pick this year their first rounder?
Let me look.
Because they lost the first and the second.
Yeah,
they lost their second rounder because they'd already traded their first rounder.
Yeah, their GM was not even there anymore. So they got no first. They do have 2 seconds, but no third.
Okay, you can do something with 2 seconds.
Yeah,
you can do something with 2 seconds. You can draft great players in the second round.
You can't. What they got? Oh, the second they got for Anthony Duclair. I see. I thought I saw Derek Stepan in there, and I was about to faint. It's bleak. It's not looking good, man.
Bleak, and it's a shame. It's a shame because there are people there that are extremely passionate. You would have to be.
Yeah.
Like I tell this story all the time. When I flew into Arizona, when I was there, one of the first things I did when I went up to the kiosk at Enterprise was say, "Hey, where do the Coyotes play?" And because I'm like, how far away is Glendale from? They're still in Glendale, right? Where the hell are they now? Anyway, the person that you're talking to at the desk usually knows their way around the area pretty well, and the woman had never even heard of the Coyotes.
Oh my God,
like,
man!
I don't know what those are. What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? What are the Coyotes? What group is that? And I said, it's the hockey team. She said, no idea.
That's like,
it's one thing like not to watch, but not to know who they are.
Does Toronto have a professional indoor soccer team? Because I feel like you might as well have asked that.
We probably do.
I feel like we do. Mm-hmm. Or did. I don't remember.
Jesse's looking it up right now. He's on it.
The Mississauga Metro Stars.
Ooh.
They don't Dwayne DiRosario played for them.
Oh,
That's cool. They don't exist anymore. They were founded in 2018 and dissolved in 2019.
So they had a good run. Good run. Historic. Hey, by the way, I want to let you know too, before we get into the press conference here, officially as of like an hour ago, the ECHL's Brampton Beast have folded.
Oh, wow.
Man, well, I know COVID obviously, but why can't they make hockey in Brampton work? What is it about?
There's been the Battalion. There's been, what other teams have been out there?
The Battalion had to move to North Bay. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Jesse, you were going to say something?
No, go ahead.
Well, they can't make it work. They can't make it work. And
Brampton, no one wants to miss a Leaf game.
Well, but like Mississauga has been a tough sell too. Like I was with the Steelheads, and it was a challenge getting people in the seats, but there were some.
Yeah, but weren't popular. Like I know Cherry had a huge influence on it, but they were never a draw. No, like here, population of Brampton. It's the greater Toronto area for anyone who's like, Jesus, Brampton's population is over 600,000. I did not know that.
Which would put them just outside of the top 10 in Canada. Mississauga is in the top 10 in Canada.
Yeah, I think Mississauga is the 6th largest city in the entire country.
It's bigger than Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And it's so weird because in terms of the sports landscape, neither really has an identity, which is wild. As
someone who grew up in Mississauga, it's not like you don't associate with Mississauga sports teams because Toronto's right there. Like I'm a Toronto Raptors fan. I don't really cheer for the 905, you know? Like we don't consider ourselves like the AHL teams, the D League teams, the AAA baseball city. Like we're still in the major city because we're so close to Toronto, and it's just so accessible. Well, like I'm going to a Blue Jays game. I'm going to a Leafs game. I'm not going to see the Ice Dogs.
This isn't a perfect comparison, but like Saskatoon and Regina are able to have their own sports identity. One's got the Pats, the other has the Blades. But then I was thinking about it. Wait a sec, Toronto doesn't have a junior hockey team either. So what's going on there? It's almost like Toronto cannibalizes like
the Leafs,
other markets, but also itself.
Yeah. The Leafs are that big. Yeah, like I don't know how to quantify it for people. Like it's
and Jays,
when a Leaf game is on,
and Raps,
sure,
and TFC.
But it's like when the Leafs are on. In terms, if you're a hockey fan, I would give up tickets to the Brampton whatever. I'd give up tickets to the Marlies if the Leafs were on. I'm watching the Leafs.
Yeah. If I'm from Oakville, if I'm from Burlington, I'm like the Leafs are my city's team.
Yeah.
Like it's not whatever is going on in my local city. It's no Toronto, that Leafs team is my team, that Raptors team is my team, that Jays team is my team.
And Steve, you often talk about the imaginary border between the United States and Canada, because really it is. It's just a line on a map. And the culture changes like that. It's weird, but it does. But between Toronto and Mississauga and Brampton and Scarborough's not, Durham region, whatever you want to, North York, all of those regions don't have that invisible line in the same way that like culture changes when I go to Mississauga.
Toronto is 7 million people. Let's be honest. Yeah. Toronto is 7.
Exactly.
Toronto proper is like 2.5, but the greater Toronto area is.
The city doesn't end, right? It's like New York, New Jersey, Long Island. They're connected, but they're vastly distinct. Right?
I have an extremely unpopular opinion for a lot of people, but I'm going to say it. Do you have a GO station? You're part of Toronto.
Okay, well, Niagara has a GO station. So
Niagara's got one.
Niagara's part of Toronto.
Okay.
It's 2.5 hours away. It's part of Toronto.
I think
might have to pump the brakes on that one. But
I think that was your worst
part of Toronto.
Don't put that one into This Is Ruining My Life too. Like that will make the book.
The urban sprawl though is so
it's crazy.
It's very weirdly constructed here. Like Hamilton, I think can have its own sports identity, but even them, they've kind of struggled. They have the Ticats. I know they have a CPL team. What was that, Adam?
They love the Ticats.
Yeah, they have an OHL team now. They can support an OHL team. But like that's way over there.
Yeah. Hamilton, you start feeling like, okay, the different stuff is going on here. Like this is its own kind of identity.
But like Brampton, Mississauga combined are like 1.3 million people, and there's one junior hockey team.
Yeah, we associate with Toronto. We're not AHL. We're not.
I know, but like Mississauga is big enough to have its own identity, and it's got like a weird shaped building, and that's it.
Also, the Paramount Fine Food Center is built in the worst part. It's not near anything.
Yeah,
like they should have built things near like Square One area, or if you want to go even a little west. But it's out like towards the 403 there, and there's nothing else there. It's on its own place, and it's the worst. And there's no exit from the highway. It's terribly city planned. And if they ever decide to build a new arena, they need to.
They should just build it on top of Square One. There's enough room.
Cool.
Like why not?
Yeah. Like
Madison Square Garden is how many floors? You could you have to understand, and if you're not from this area and you're listening to this going, I don't know what the fuck these guys are talking about. I want you to imagine for a second, which is fair, right? Square One is not a mall. It's a neighborhood. It's enormous. It's so big. And it's like one of the last super malls out there because a lot of those malls have closed.
Yeah, it's the largest mall in Ontario.
You could put a hockey rink on that, no problem, and you wouldn't even see it from the other side.
That'd be cool.
So big. So maybe they should do that.
You know, in Disney cartoons where someone's wandering the desert and they see an oasis out of nowhere, like that's what downtown Mississauga looks like.
Yeah, really.
when you're driving past it.
No kidding. Oh my God.
You're just, what is that? Oh, that's the entirety of downtown Mississauga, and the rest of it is just houses.
Calling it downtown Mississauga is even like aggressive. Like there's no downtown Mississauga. It's just kind of houses and schools.
My favorite ever, Jesse, is I was driving through Halliburton, and on the sign that says "Welcome to Downtown Halliburton" is in a grocery store parking lot.
Let's do the press conference.
Also, they just closed Palladium, so maybe convert the Palladium into a stadium for the Raptors 905.
Palladium Stadium.
There you go. I also want to throw this at you. Stat from John Shannon before we get going in the press conference here. Connor McDavid, 100 points in his first 92 games. His next 100 points happened in 82 games. His next 100 points happened in 68. His next 100 in 67. His next 100 in 64. 500 points for Connor McDavid. Not bad.
It's absolutely unbelievable.
Better and better and better. Connor freaking McDavid, everybody.
He's going to have 1,000 points before he turns 30.
Oh, it's insane.
Crosby reached 500 points in the exact same amount of games.
Man, and think of the help Crosby had. Like, we can talk about team. Yeah, we can talk about who the better all-around players are. To me, I think it's Crosby. Like, I'm talking prime Crosby. But Connor McDavid is the pinnacle of hockey offensively. No one's been better.
I love the reply. By the way, that was a John Shannon tweet. And the first response to it, are you guys ready? The McGillney of his era without the lone cup, an amazing talent who will also get forgotten by the Hall of Fame someday for his inability to play on a good team.
Yeah. Connor McDavid is not going to make the Hall of...
If he retired tomorrow, he'd make the Hall of Fame.
Okay, let's get away from the bad tweet.
McGillney of his era?
Legal read was a mistake.
First question comes from Justin Mariles. I don't know how to say your last name, Justin. I apologize. He wants to know how many goals did Steve score on David Ayers yesterday? So, Steve, Jeff Merrick sent out a photo on his Twitter account. This is what Justin is referring to. Jeff Merrick tweeted out a photo of you, David Ayers, and himself on Merrick's backyard rink. What the hell happened, and where's this going?
So I can only tell you so much, but as you know, the anniversary for David Ayers' NHL victory on February 23rd, 2020 is coming up, where he suited up for the Carolina Hurricanes and defeated the Toronto Maple Leafs because goals from John Tavares and Pierre Engvall made him the goalie of record. We went to Jeff Merrick's outdoor rink, which has become a de facto studio for Sportsnet because Ron McLean was there the other day as well. But I was there with David Ayers, the David Ayers. We met for the first time, distance, masks, all that stuff. And we shot what we're hoping is going to be 3 different features, all digital. 1 or 2 of them might go on TV. And in terms of did I or didn't I score a goal, you're going to have to wait and see.
Oh, I love it. So excited for this.
That better make
It's so fucking cool, Steve. Like, what a cool thing.
It was really awesome. It was really cool. Yeah. I have a very silly life. I'm well aware. It was, as I was driving there, I'm like, this is a very silly thing I'm about to do. And then I got on the ice. I'm like, this is stupid. It was a lot of fun. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to spoil it.
The next question comes from Phil at L. No, I'm going to try and read that. How bad are those Vegas gold helmets? What do you guys think of them?
I think they're great. I love them.
Oh, I said in my Dang It's video that they look like the door section in Home Depot. Like they just look like a bunch of doorknobs. Like they look like a bunch of brass doorknobs. I appreciate that they're trying something new. And you know what? I think a crowd would make it way better. The Vegas crowd.
Because the crowd would get into it.
Not only would they get into it, but the Vegas crowd is unique to Vegas. There's something about it that makes it feel like Vegas. And now they're just a bunch of dicks skating around an empty building. I think if the fans were there, it would be way less corny. But right now, I think it looks stupid.
I love it. I'm here for it.
Steve thinks it's stupid. All right.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. And you know what? Like, I think this debate is about as important as the debate about whether advertisement should be on helmets. Just let people enjoy shit.
No, but helmets are sacred, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, everyone complaining about advertisements on helmets. No one gives a shit that they're shiny. The hell? Anyway.
Final question. It's from Normie Chomsky. To piggyback on Edge's Devils fandom, do you guys have a second team you cheer for?
I think Adams is Tampa, isn't it? Or is it Nashville?
Tampa. Always
do you root for them? Yeah. Like, were you happy when they won the cup?
It was sort of like, it was like that with Calgary too. It was like 2A and 2B. Calgary was the first hockey game I think I ever saw. Tavares was in net. And my grandfather was there the whole time and was a Flame season ticket holder. And, you know, I obviously lived in Calgary for a couple of years, loved it. I think, but I think it's Tampa. And just because like, it's such a great experience when you go see things at Amalie, like you can go to a tiki hut bar before a playoff game. Like it's pretty pretty awesome for a Canadian to walk down there. And there are so many. I mean, that was the place where I swear I saw David Steckel's dad. I know
because you saw a Steckel jersey.
Because I saw a Leaf jersey with Steckel on it at a Nashville Tampa game. I'm like, that's Dave Steckel's dad, because he's old enough to be number one. Number two, no one's buying a Steckel jersey. What? And it for sure was Steckel's dad.
I got to find out where Dave Steckel's from. Oh my God.
Well, he could be from anywhere and his parents are just living in Tampa, you know.
Like, you imagine and be like, wow, I really like, that's my face-off king, Dave Steckel.
I knew it. Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Really?
No, I don't.
Yeah, whatever. People retired to Florida from all over. So I think I love Tampa. I think it's a great city. Lots of cool places to eat and doesn't get the credit it deserves. So that's my second team.
I do not have a second team, but I did have a second team. Well, I really, really got behind the Calgary Flames when they were in the Cup final in 2004. Cool. That's why they lost. And also Jerome McGinley, obviously, and the Stormy jerseys, the with the black and the horse. Some people hate those. I think they're friggin' cool.
They're cool.
But my only true second team when I was younger was the Detroit Red Wings, because of it started with Chris Draper. Because he was from the same neighborhood, he visited my school and everything.
Don Draper's brother. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but it was the story that followed them, because my introduction to the Avs Wings rivalry was everybody else's, but it started with a guy who my teacher was already like instilling in us, like this guy is achieving and he came from this neighborhood, and then he gets hit from behind by Claude Lemieux. So now I hate Claude Lemieux and I hate the Avalanche. And then they win. The true sign of a good heel is they win.
They have to win.
They have to win. And then next year, blood feud happens, the huge brawl. I was so into that, and I was cheering for the Red Wings. Then they win the cup, and I'm cheering for the Red Wings. The tragedy happens with the big car accident. Vladimir Konstantinov's in a wheelchair, and I'm cheering for the Red Wings. I'm cheering for win it for Vladdy. I think I still have the newspaper that I bought at Sugar Plaza, Adam. I love the Red Wings. I wore Red Wings hats. I had the championship hat and everything. I still do. I used to love the Red Wings.
There you go.
Yeah,
it helps when the team wins the cups. I remember staying up for number 2 when they swept the Caps, and that was the first time my parents let me stay up on my own and expected me to turn off the TV, shut off the lights, and go to bed by myself.
I still remember clear as day. Game 4, there's a fan in the stands, and he's holding up a sign that says, "We remember the 1942 Leafs." And I had to ask my dad what the hell that meant. And he's like, well, yeah, because they were they were the first and only team to come back from 3-0 down in the Stanley Cup final.
See, the Leafs used to be the team coming back. You see?
Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah. And you know the coach of the Caps, Adam, who lost
Never heard of him.
Final? Ron Wilson.
Never heard of him.
Never.
Peter Bondra and Adam Oates were on fire that playoff, by the way. Holy shit, they were good.
And Ole the goalie.
His hockey was good.
It was good. It was very good. Very, very good. Until the end.
But I like
the end. The end sucked because the trap Robbie Fatorik and the New Jersey Devil trap era was the worst.
Screw you, New Jersey.
Yeah, but the Leafs did well, so I looked past it for a while.
True. Good point. All right. Any more questions, Jess?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, listen, with thanks to Katie Strang for sharing your time. What an unbelievable article. And thank you so much for listening. And of course, we will be back on Monday, you guys. So be ready for that. The Leafs obviously have the game tonight against Ottawa. Quickly, Jesse, Steve, will Freddie Andersen start tonight in 3, 2, 1?
No.
Wow, you guys both think Hutch is in. Sheldon Keefe has not committed yet, will not say publicly, so we'll see. And then we obviously got the Montreal Canadiens game to obsess about on Monday because that is happening on Saturday night again. Super duper. You know what? I do love this season. There's some pretty damn good matchups. There's a lot of stuff that we didn't get to, with apologies to Florida Panthers fans and their Jekyll and Hyde goaltending. The Chicago Blackhawks I wanted to get to today, who honestly are doing well. Question mark?
Remember, I was they got no goalie. I was looking at the wrong goalie.
Doug Armstrong talking about Team Canada. Listen, these will all be stories next week that we will get to on the Steve Dangle Podcast, and we will see you Monday.
Steve. the Steve Dangle Podcast. Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake. Connection complete.